How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to today's Progress Yesterday's Plan, the podcast where we talk about turning our goals into plans rather than just dreams. And so make sure you can watch us on YouTube, and you could also catch us on Spotify and Pandora and Amazon Music. Today is a very special episode because we have our first guest, and it's a very special guest. Today, I have my friend Dayvee Sutton, who is a national correspondent, and she's a travel and environmental journalist. And I'm very excited to have her on here. 1 year exactly from a special trip we took last year before things got all crazy. Dayvee, how are you? Welcome.
Hi, Marco. I'm so excited to be on your show. And first of all, congratulations on moving forward on this idea.
Thanks, Dayvee. I'm really excited to be moving forward on it. That's like the main thing I want to talk about on this show is like how we can move forward on ideas. And I really look up to you because you just do so much, and I try to keep up with your pace of like how you move forward. And can you tell the viewers a little bit more about your background and what you do exactly?
Yeah. So my background is as a traditional journalist. I come from that world mostly in sports. So and then I like at your local station, and then I went to national networks. Actually, it was national networks first, and then went to a local network. And then I hosted a lifestyle and entertainment show for 4 years, and then I went back to doing sports. But when I did that show, I realized there was a whole world that I thought I fit in better for TV presenting, and that was in that lifestyle space. That's when I first got my wet my whistle for doing travel content professionally, and actually then I was birthed to have a production company. So I have a production company in which I house everything that you may see me doing publicly is under there. So whether it's working for a national network or producing my own content, it's under the guise of my production company called Dream Network Media.
Awesome. And Davey, so can I ask, when all this was, I mean, that was a lot, which you mentioned, and as it was developing and you were developing professionally, are you exactly where you imagined yourself to be? Like, was it a goal that you've had for a long time to be a presenter, or, like how did you move your way through like achieving these things and getting to where you're at?
That's a good question, because when I went to college, I went to UCLA. um, I didn't really know what I wanted to do at that point in time. And so I just picked a degree, which has turned to be very useful in my profession. But at the time, you wouldn't have thought it correlated. It's useful in my profession to what I do now. It's the study of world religions. And I
Okay,
cover
okay.
cultures, environment, and all under the umbrella of travel. So, but it's so funny because during the pandemic, I'm back at my parents' house for a temporary stay, and I was going through some old VHS tapes, and I apparently always wanted to do this. We always took a road trip. Um, I grew up in Los Angeles, and my parents are from the East Coast. So my dad would rent an RV, and during the summer, and for 2 weeks, we would go different routes across our country. And I think it was in 1989. I'm really dating myself. I won't tell you how old I was, but if you look at my social media, you'll see how old I was. I Throughout the course of the trip, I was presenting what I saw and telling people what I learned, and ending it with eyewitness. So it was so funny. And also, when I started covering travel, my mom said that I used to always watch Samantha Brown on the Travel Channel and say she had the best job. And I was like, I wish I would have known all of this while I took my journey, but I also have accepted my journey is my journey. So am I where I want to be? No, I'm not. But I am happy but I do know that I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't take certain risks and leave the comforts of the traditional world. Corporate America. Corporate America for me was your local newsroom, your national newsroom. And I still work in a national newsroom, but it's on my own terms.
That's awesome. I mean, so it was totally meant to be. And how do you like personally recognize moments like that? I think it's one thing to know exactly what we want to be or like where we want to be, and then there's times where sometimes opportunities are presented to us that we might not maybe realize at the moment, or we're scared to take that leap. I mean, like you said, leaving the corporate world, I think is something that most people might think about or consider. How did you know that was for you, or you wanted to take that leap?
Yeah, it wasn't so much, it was a bit of jumping off a cliff, I always say, but jumping off a cliff with a parachute. So, I had a bit of money saved, I had a bit of a strategy. And the thing is, when you're developing things and when you have these ideas that are presented to you, I always think that they're like gifts from God. And it's not that you're so
Nice.
special, it's just that in that moment, whether it's God or the universe, that idea
Mhm.
is presented to you so you can move on it, but that idea still needs to be manifested in this world so you can move on it and then find success in that journey, or it's going to move on to somebody else. So sometimes you might have an idea from 5 years ago, and then you might see it 5 years later that someone else has done, and you're like, oh, I should have had the idea. And or some people even sue people that person
Yeah.
stole the idea, but you've never met them. That all of that energy comes into play. So for me, I think early on in my career, in my 20s, I didn't have a traditional route to being a local television person, because I didn't study it in school. So I had to do a lot of catching up in my early 20s. And I found ways to get internships and get my foot in the building. And I inherently am a shy person. So speaking
No.
to people and putting myself out there was always a big deal. I always had a lot of anxiety. My nails, I still bite them away, because that's what I do when I sit and think. I'm just like
Yeah.
gnawing at my fingers and stuff. But it's you come to a point where it's like, can you live without doing this?
Mm.
And if you can, then it's not something that you should pursue. But if you cannot live without it, then you figure out a way how to keep chipping away at it. And chipping away is the best analogy, because we've heard over and over, overnight successes take 10 years. It's
Mhm.
because you have to keep preparing yourself so that when that opportunity comes, then you are ready. And then the opportunity comes, you're ready and you're professional and you hit all of your marks, whatever field it may be in. And so then you keep getting booked or asked to do that same thing that you've been preparing for. So that's the best way I can answer that.
No, that's awesome. That's great advice. And it goes with, again, what like the premise of what I like to talk about here on the podcast is, for me personally, is one of those strategies I could say that I've been implementing is like speaking it more and like putting it out there versus just having the ideas in my head. I like that idea that you said we all have these great ideas, and sometimes someone else acts on these ideas, whether they've heard you do it or not. And I've always been under the the idea of like I don't like to speak much or say much because I like to keep things a little low until I start doing something, or until I take that idea and move with it. Then it'll speak for itself, or I could show it. What I found is that sometimes I just never act on it because either, like you were saying, either shyness or just no confidence to like move forward with it. It's kind of like held me back more. So one idea behind this podcast is just like speak ideas, speak them out there, and hopefully be accountable to what I'm putting out into the universe or into the world, and like act on them and taking notes and like, hey, I said this, or I don't know if that makes sense, but like speaking more of the reality to attract it, to attract
Yeah, that's
things.
all a part of manifesting, right? And
Mm.
I think what you said, shyness and unconfidence go hand in hand. But I think the excuse a lot of us give to each other for holding things close to our chest is that, oh, I don't want people to take my ideas. And it's hidden behind the unconfidence, or I'm not quite sure of myself. But what it has, my experience that's been even more powerful is that the more you tell people about what you're doing next, the more opportunity comes in that someone might say, hey, we're actually looking for somebody that's doing that, or I know somebody who just mentioned that. And so that's how you start, that's how it's all working together to kind of draw it towards you. And it also has a lot to do with the energy, right? The energy that we sometimes, we've been on some epic trips together, right? And so, after we done something that's like a bucket list experience that we got to do as our job, we have this adrenaline afterwards and we're on this high, and then you feel like you can conquer the world, and all of that higher level vibration is the space that we should always be aspiring to get to, because then that's what we're kind of syncing up with the universe more, or and pulling more of that stuff towards us. It's like when we're in a slump and then we have a bad day and then things keep going bad, that's the energy that is going forward. So I think all of these things and all of these ideas work hand in hand. And me personally, I've been, there have been more of these concepts making more sense to me in the past couple of years, and me applying it, Marco, has made me feel that I can conquer the world. And in fact, in the morning I do these affirmations. And first of all, I'm not a morning person because I worked in sports most of my career. I'm not a morning person. It's because sports go into late night. But instead of saying my affirmations, I've actually recorded them on my phone. And so in the morning, I just play them, and that gets me going for the day. And one of the things that I say is that I hope for a big win today, or a win. I look forward to the win that I will get today. And sometimes the win is just inbox somebody inquiring about my services that I've never networked with, that I don't know how they found me. And because I said that in the morning, it's kind of top of mind for me to stop and recognize. And because all of these things have been making more sense to me like the past few years, I am able to recognize and cheer myself and not just kind of push on to the next thing. I kind of rejoice and give kudos for when those things happen.
That's awesome. That's a really dope concept that you do in the mornings. I have a journal that I do affirmations in, and I write, and I like just have a stream of consciousness that I put it out there. But I really like what you mentioned about putting it and then listening back to it. I get up early and I go for walks with my dog every morning, and I have my coffee and I let my mind wander, and I use that as like a time to that. I feel like that'd be a great time to like listen back to those. So, I mean, for those of you listening and watching, I think that's an awesome tip there to start implementing to like our routines. You mentioned something.
Because here's the thing, I just want to go button that up,
Yeah.
because some mornings we may not wake up in a good mood. And so you don't have to do any work. You don't have to say anything except for just play that. And being in your own voice, I shared that with somebody else I know, and a business owner that I know. And she said, but I don't like hearing my own voice. And I was like, so I don't know how to help you for that. But at some point, when we probably are used to our voices because we're presenters, but at some point you got to weigh the pros and cons, like, and so it's a way that I don't have to do any work except for push play. And also there's power, what you talked about earlier, in saying it out loud. And so those affirmations and those things that I want to manifest in my life are being said out in the world, in my voice. And all I have to do is listen and slowly wake up to it.
Yes, I love that. I love that 100%, and I'm going to start practicing that. Thank you for that tip there, Dayvee. One thing you mentioned a minute ago, which was really important, like you said, now sometimes we wake up to not good mornings, or obstacles are always around us or in front of us. And I feel like depending on how we look at them and how we deal with them, I'm like, I want to mention that our last trips that we took were a year ago in January, starting the year, which I think, like many of us, for me personally, felt awesome to start the year with these trips lined up. Ideas were coming together. And then 2020 took like a spin, like on many personal levels,
Yeah.
the whole global pandemic. as you know, on our last trip, and I've shared this in the podcast, my father ended up passing away in the beginning of the year. It's going to be a year this month.
Yeah.
And that was like one flip upside down. And then the
Pray
year
that
that fall,
too, right?
right? So it totally goes into like what the pandemic did for us. And so how do you deal with things like, I mean, I looked at the year and we've kept in touch and in contact, and I still see you steaming forward and doing new things. And like many people have been able to adapt and many haven't. But how do you recognize new opportunities or deal with obstacles when you know where you want to go and get to? Like I don't think you let things slow you down, Dayvee.
uh when there are obstacles, like if there's a no here, I have adapted to just moving over and trying to find the next door. But I think we have to also recognize that first, career wise, I didn't go the traditional route, so I had to kind of be
Mhm.
innovative to getting into the door in the first place. And second, there were less doors because I'm a Black woman. And
Okay.
at the time that I started, there was the concept of we already have a Black woman.
Mm.
There was like one
Mhm.
spot, if there were a spot. And so for me to get in, I had to start. I had to come up with ideas, and I knew I wanted to do sports, and so I would uh, innovatively get myself, credentialed to go to cover sports. And I was
Innovatively.
one man banding before that was, one man band or MMJ before more
Mhm.
stations were doing that, because I didn't, no one, I didn't have any friends that would go, stay the whole game at the Braves and then have me practice doing stand-ups awful in a very awful way. But I just kept trying because I remember I came to the point, is this something that you can live without doing? And it wasn't. And every time I asked my question and that question to myself, and every time it was hard, and it took me a long time. I even had one person that I knew that kept saying that, well, she, every once in a while she would say, how long are you going to pay your dues? And I
Mm.
remember taking the blow, because like feeling like a blow with that, because it had been some years that had been trying to get my foot in the door, and it was taking an internship here,
Wow.
and all of those little opportunities were wins, and all of those little opportunities were ways for me to get one step closer to being in this world that I've been in for about 20 years. And so um that is kind of deeply in me.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I had to learn, which could be valuable to your audience, is that your journey is your journey. And you might see somebody who started off at the same start line as you and apparently go this way, but you have to look, if you think of a track and track and field, you have to stay in your own lane and focus on your path. And your path, their path may seem to be smooth and
Mm.
and downhill, right? Like they started, and next thing you know, they're here. You if you look at them for too long, you might have to look at them because you're forced to look at them. They might be on your feed, right?
Mhm.
If
Mhm.
you look at them for too long, you're not spending time doing what you're meant to do. And what your may have, like nails and glass and a wall, and you have to figure out how to scale that wall. And then it might have a windstorm that pushes you all the way back to the start line. Like, and that could be something like you losing your father, or or
Mhm.
people maybe going through divorces, or they have an unexpected child, or etc. You have to concentrate on your path and your journey, and you will get there. We've all seen that kind of meme or cartoon where somebody was like close to the end,
Mhm.
and then they turned around right before the end, and we don't know
Yes.
when we will get to where we get to. But those are two kind of main concepts that really keep me driven and focused. Is that, yes, of course, it's actually the bulk of my career has not been easy. Nothing about where you see me and where I've been has been easy. I've always had to create space for myself. So that should be established. But the thing that I live without it? And is the question that I ask, and keeping focused on my path. And sometimes
Mhm.
that even means unfollowing people that you
Mhm.
might, you know, enjoy their content, but it's distracting you from focus because it might make you feel a certain way, like, oh, I wish I would have had that opportunity. You might have to unfollow
Yeah.
them so that you can focus on your journey.
I like that. I like that. And because it's like identifying the things we want and the things we don't want or that don't belong. You're right. Like some things, whether they're distractions or people close to us who care about us very much, but sometimes what they like say or their advice, because they don't understand our journey, might not be the right one. We have to learn to like zone certain things out. I know that like me on a personal side, sometimes I would, whether it's like family members or friends that they're easier to critique us because it's fun. We know each other, we know how to push buttons, and I don't think there's ill intent. We make fun of each other, our friends and stuff. And for a while, I would let that kind of affect me and like, oh yeah, I shouldn't do that because I did look kind of dumb, or like the jokes just like hit close to home. And like I've had to learn to just like zone that out, turn that off, and like you said, recognize the path that you want to be on and follow that. I wanted to ask you, Dayvee, is so like this year moving forward, I know like currently today, this week you launched a new YouTube channel. You just started doing more creative films and different types of content. Um, Everybody look out for, if you could tell us where to find that YouTube channel and tell us a bit about that project you're moving forward with,
Yeah,
which
I
I think
started
it's
a
great.
couple of months ago when I did a temporary pandemic move to the Outer Banks. So there's like 9 travel films on there.
Mhm.
But they're just like storytelling travel logs, and sometimes there might be like a more creative film at a destination, where I tie in other issues, but it's kind of like the stuff that I want to do but don't have a place to put it
Mm,
yet. So I'm building it. So I would love more people to follow it. It's under my name, Dayvee Sutton, Dayveesutton. So I would love to build it up because, of course, the more people that watch it, then YouTube will show more people of it.
for
But
sure.
I wanted some of that content. I had always been making stories like that, but sending them to some of the distribution channels that I have. But this way, I can make it more personal. I can add things. I don't have to worry about, add things that really directly affect it. I can have a little more fun, and it doesn't have to be in a specific strict format. I can change the
Mhm.
format at any whim. So that's the advantage of YouTube, um, that you can do whatever you want, relatively speaking. So yeah, that has been fun, but it takes a lot of time, and so I have to. I had some of the projects that we had been on earlier last year. I didn't distribute yet because, of course, we know the world shut down. So
Mhm.
I put some of those up, and I'm trying to get to a space where it doesn't take so much time, so that I can get back to the other stuff that I have to do.
For sure. That's cool. And one of the things that I like is your storytelling. I love the flow of it. I love how conscious you are of the story you want to say. And I'm speaking right now specifically like of the Banff trip that we were both on together a year ago. And it was cool to see like the story like flow together so well. And me in my head, I'm like, man, like how does this stuff like um just get put together like so seamlessly? Like I think you have a great way of thinking. I remember when we were shooting, like you already had in your mind, I know like how things were gonna work, like going
Well,
into your stand-ups and
I have experience in
yeah.
storytelling. So I've been for 20 years. Um, and so it may look like it comes easier to me. It comes easier to me, but it's because I practiced it. So
Mhm.
definitely skill set that anyone can develop because it's something that you have to practice. And I just like writers aren't immediately good at
Mhm.
writing, they have to practice it. So that's how I was able to do what you're able to see on YouTube right now. And for another skill set is how to film in the field and see what story we have coming from it. And I didn't know. Only thing I knew when we started our trips was some of the places we would go, but I didn't know what would come from it. And so when we are taking these experiences, the story starts notes. I take notes for what I see, and the story develops over time. And at the end of each night, actually, I go through the footage and see what I have. And so how to know what I will do for a stand-up. Some of them are spontaneous. I think I showed you one trick we were on when we were somewhere in Mexico.
Yeah.
And I like a guide said something and I was like, oh, that's a good little nugget. And so I just dip away and then I say it right then. That's one trick. But then some of the more things that tie one thing to the next thing come as I'm reviewing what I experienced. And that part is actually really exciting to me. I'll be in my hotel room and I'm like, okay, what do I have? And I'm like, oh, this story. Okay, this is how the story is forming. That building of the story is really exciting for me. And usually like when I'm coming home from I'm like, I can't wait to get home and edit and write the story and put it together. And it's always better for me to do it almost immediately, which because it becomes more daunting as time goes away, because those little nuances of how I felt and what I saw might be lost because on those notes, they're just like quick little notes. So anyways, that's how that happened.
No, I
Yeah.
love it. I got two takeaways from what you just said right there. One, that really cool tip that I remember, we were in Yucatan in a hacienda where he's like, that is still in my head. I remember that was a cool one. But one is like practice, like you were saying, like it came with all the practice and going. So whether if you are listening or watching, like if you're thinking of doing anything, like go and do it, like practice, do one, do another one and another one, because 1% progress just adds up every time you do it. I think sometimes we kind of hold back, and I've always liked the saying, like, done is better than perfect,
Well,
because
I think when
sometimes
people think they know it's not going to be good. And I think if you go in knowing it's not going to be good. In fact, Marco, one of my
great.
goals for years has been I used to be like really good at Spanish. I don't want to say like almost fluent, but I would understand almost everything someone would say and I could communicate. And of course, when you don't practice it, it goes away. And so for years, it's been like, get your Spanish back. So what I've started doing is just every single day I've been into watching this series on Netflix, and getting my ear trained to listening. And they're speaking Spanish from Spain, so it's different than what I'm used to. But still, that I would hear, like my ear is starting to recognize the words again, and then I'll stop watching the show, and then some of the words will come out. And that is a slow it's a 1% progress for me. It's not a sprint, because I also started to see people during quarantine have been doing language sprints, but you have to invest a lot of time in that. Like for that to work, people spending like 4 to 6 hours a day practicing that language. And I can't commit to that, but what I can commit to do is trying to do a little bit every day. And that is progress. But letting yourself off the hook and understanding to start, and it's not going to be perfect, but it's actually probably going to be bad. At least you're starting, and that is a movement towards what you want to do.
Totally. And it's a movement. I love it. Towards progress, practicing, planning, really focusing on what you want, and like taking that step forward. After that first step, the next one comes. I love that, Dayvee. We're running out of time here. I want to thank you for your time so much. I know you're busy and you got other things scheduled in front of you. Totally a lot of takeaways on this broadcast. Dayvee, do you want to tell us one more time where we could find your socials, any of the content you're working on, where people could find you?
It's pretty easy. I keep it very seamless. It's Dayvee Sutton, DayveeSutton. So you can find me on all social media. My website's there. That's where you can see the work and stuff that I'm doing, and even my YouTube channel.
Awesome. Again, Dayvee, thank you for being with me today. For those of you watching and listening, I hope you had some powerful takeaways from this interview. I know I did. I'm so thankful for Dayvee. And as always, you guys, I'll catch you next time.